Welcome to Global Investment Voice, where we explore investment migration issues and opportunities from around the world. With a special focus on the U.S. EB-5 Immigrant Investor Program, we'll also cover citizenship and residency by investment programs from around the globe. If you're an investor, fund manager, developer, or enterprising entrepreneur and want to get the most out of these global investment migration programs, you have come to the right place. I'm Mark Deal, and I'll be your co-host on this journey. I'm joined by your host attorneys Mona Shaw and Rebecca Singh, as well as other investment migration leaders from around the world. So let's get into Global Investment Voice.
Hi, Mark.
Hey, Mona.
We're post-election now. We're very much post-election. Everyone knows that President Trump is going to be the new president of the United States, and we are still getting those news articles about people being upset and wanting to leave the U.S. I saw an article in CNN just the other day. There's articles in the business magazines. They're just not stopping.
No, part of it is it truth, exaggeration? Is it hyperbole? Do these media centers, they really liked all the clicks and views they were getting leading up to the election, and now they're trying to hold on to some of that? I can see why it's confusing. Is this a real thing or is it not?
Well, there was a very interesting article that I came across at IMI the other day. Every half hour, there is a new email inquiry. And so I thought, let's talk about this. The best person is the new editor of IMI Daily, Mr. Ahmed Abbas. Welcome, Ahmed.
Hi, Mona. Thank you. And thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
So, first of all, you're the new editor. Have you pushed Christian off his pedestal, or is he still very much there?
Well, no, he's there. I mean, he's dragged me onto it. But no, he's very much involved. I mean, IMI is a very small team.
Yeah, but you are there and have been there for some years, and there are very few reputable sources in our industry. And IMI is one of them.
The thing about that is Christian has done an amazing job, to be honest, from the start. Before I joined him, he started out in 2017, and it was a one-man show for a very long time. And I think his vision to create this unbiased source of information, which is now morphed into creating more of an investment migration community, has paid off, because IMI is not, we get this a lot, that we are a reliable source and that we are one of very few. And this didn't come by chance, and this didn't come easy, to be honest.
Yes, I know that. I write a lot of articles, and it takes a lot. It's not something that you can just sit down and start writing. You have to have inside knowledge. There's just no way you can have a source of this kind of nature without a lot of inside information and inside knowledge.
Absolutely. And the problem is, I think, with investment migration, because it's not regulated on a global scale, there's no one source of information. There's no fact checking on a higher level. So it makes it even more complex. I think that's the reason why we don't see a lot of other publications in this realm, let's say. And to be unbiased, to balance your journalistic integrity and the commercial side of it is extremely tricky.
Oh, yes, of course, because people pay to play in this industry.
Exactly.
Yeah, which is really why you were the best person for this particular topic on this podcast. I know that the big players, and there are a number of big players in our industry, and they do pay to play. And their articles, you have published their articles, we've discussed the articles, but how real and genuine are these articles? So before I really get into that, how much due diligence do you actually do before you publish articles on a particular topic?
Well, we do. Not as much as the Caribbean do on an application, of course, but we do our due diligence. We publish very little of what we get, to be honest. A lot of rumors. I mean, I'm sure you've been in this for some time. You see how misinformation spreads quickly.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Rumors spread quickly. How everybody has an agenda. We don't publish a lot of what we get. We try to find information from reliable sources like the government. That's plan A. If it's something less technical, then we try to check it from different sources, different outlets, and we reach out to experts. I think readers of IMI can notice that more and more of our articles have expert opinions, and that's something we've actively been doing just to make sure of smaller things, smaller technical issues, or get more comprehensive perspectives on what's happening on the ground.
But you're dealing with such a huge industry. and so many different programs. We can take the CBI programs on the one side, and then all the European programs on the other, then the new programs coming up. And then I would say that America and EB5 stands on its own. It's just such a vast array of programs and knowledge that's required.
That's where the community issue comes in, because we've been actively trying to create this community, and it makes it much easier. Like you said, EB5 stands alone. Canada Startup Visa to some degree stands alone.
Yeah.
Nobody knows what they're doing in Australia. So
yeah.
So we do rely on experts when it comes to stuff like policy updates, new data.
What about the opinions?
Well, opinion articles, we like those because opinion articles, IMI is unopinionated. We want to remain unbiased. We do not publish any personal opinions on this, but opinion articles are very good. They give you a different angle of looking at things, and we do check them for information that's non-factual. So our main two rules are you can't post something that is wrong or non-factual, and you can't post something that is a slight towards another company or a country or a person or something like that. But when it comes to opinion articles, if you read them, they're mostly analytical more than they are opinionated.
And do you vet every single article that comes in?
Yes, be it news, be it opinion, be it even sponsored features, the ones that are paid for and where the advertiser owns the content, let's say. We do have to vet each and every single one of them. And sometimes at the end of the day, we are human. Sometimes mistakes do happen. They're far and in between. So that's good. But that's where our experts come in. Sometimes if we publish something from one single source that is not very reliable, we check in with our experts. If something's wrong, they come back to us. So it's good to have that support group.
Yeah. And the other thing is it's very difficult to get a quality article ready 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And you guys do that.
Christian's biggest regrets, if you ask him, is naming it to IMI daily. And you can't really plan ahead because it's news mostly. You can't stack articles to do it. But I mean, that's what has to be done. And thankfully this year, we've had no shortage of stories.
Yeah, no, it does take a lot of planning. Well, look, good to know, and keep up the good work. We love you. And we're just thrilled that there is such an independent source. So as I said, keep up the good work. All right. Now, your article. Every half hour, there is a new email inquiry. I get it. I understand. Trump coming back for the world seems to be a huge issue. What is wrong with the American people, so to speak? And how will this affect immigration? And will he throw out all foreign people, etc.? But very seriously, how really accurate is that title?
There's two ways of looking at it. If you're a big RCBI consultancy and you're getting an email every half an hour, the day is an 8-hour workday. That's 16 inquiries a day? Not that much. To be honest, it falls in line with most successful companies with more than one office. But I get where you're coming from in terms of, is it exaggeration? And I think, and this is a personal opinion of mine, that yes, in terms of the American market, and the companies and media have been doing this for some time, I think they're exaggerating, let's call it the demand to leave the US. I don't think that it's this big because every 2 hours you're seeing a new article on the topic.
Yeah.
So you take the total. Yeah, it's just insane. Everybody wants to leave. I mean, who voted for the president once you take all that into consideration? But I know companies want to tap into the American market. Maybe this is some type of peer pressure, getting Americans to excited. Yeah, somebody else is doing this. Let's look into it. Media can use this for fear mongering, just to make a point, whatever they want, push their agenda. But at the end of the day, if you do look at the statistics in Portugal, yes, the number of Americans is growing. In the Caribbean, I wouldn't say the number of Americans is big, applying to Caribbean citizenship by investment, but it's bigger than it was.
Yeah, I 120% agree with you. I do believe that there has been a shift in the market. However, it's not as huge as some of these articles would have us believe. I believe that you still have certain countries who are fixated on coming to the US. And as far as the rest of the world is concerned, the new crypto millionaires, etc., no, they're not so keen. They don't want to pay the taxes. They don't want regulatory interference. They would rather be in a place where they can just live freely.
I agree on that point. Most companies want to work with American clients, from what I understand, I've been out of the B2C game for some time right now, but because American clients are easier to process, easier to deal with than clients in countries like Yemen, for example, Iraq, China, stuff like that, where due diligence is a bit sticky, where money transfer is a bit tough. But at the end of the day, these companies are always looking for a new market to enter, and the crypto one, from what I've seen, didn't pay dividends. So I think the US is that new frontier.
Yes, I agree. There has been more, but there is also a shift in the kind of people who are coming out of the US, which I think is not often relayed in these surveys and stuff. You have a number of new immigrants who've come in, and US has not necessarily been what they wanted. It's far away from their home countries of, say, India or Asia. It's also not quite what they expected as far as living conditions. Maybe back home, they had servants easily. They're not finding they have that. I've seen a ton of people who've come here and changed their mind and given up the EB5 dream and left. It does tend to be a certain category, middle class, or the person who is, for example, a top professor who understands the value of US universities.
Your question is, do you think these are the people who are moving abroad?
Is this what you are seeing as well? I mean, that was really an opinion of mine from what I have seen. But from what you are seeing also, for the people who are now looking to come out of the US, is it this market or the people who want to come into the US?
Well, I think that goes into the details of investment migration, be it residency by investment or citizenship by investment. I think they are a good option for US citizens, like they are for everybody, because they don't force you to leave. You don't have to relocate. You don't have to move your life abroad. But at the same time, people who have come to the US and found out it's not what it used to be. I mean, it's not like the 1980s or 1990s where you can come in, find a job and live the American dream. But at the same time, for people who don't have a lot of financial means, there are simpler routes. If their goal is to relocate, be it skilled migration, business migration, financial independence, there are other routes. So I think the focus of citizenship and residency by investment, inherently because it doesn't require relocation, and in many cases, the place that offers it is not a suitable destination for many, I think it's mainly focused on US citizens, not the people coming in.
Well, I can tell you that this is what I have seen. And the other factor of people that I have seen leaving the US are the ones who have been waiting for many years for immigration to go through. So what the US has are backlogs for certain countries. There's only a certain quota of visas allowed every year. And there's only a certain quota within that quota of visas allowed for each particular country. So if you take populous countries like China, like India, then they get backlogged very, very quickly. So people who've been waiting for a while, yeah, they're looking at, okay, I'm done, I'm fed up. Let's go and look at Portugal. Let's look at Malta.
And that makes sense, doesn't it? It makes sense. Right now, the waiting times in Portugal and Malta are not really enticing, let's say. Malta, the wait times are not bad, but you have to wait 1 or 3 years to get your citizenship. But in Portugal right now, processing times are averaging, 18 months?
Oh, it's the same as the US right now. So
Exactly.
US is slow.
I've been a proponent of the EB5, a reserved fan, let's call it, of the EB5 program since I got into this industry. The only issue was the wait times. But now if you look at the EU golden visas, for example, in terms of both outlay and waiting times, it's not that different. So I think it comes down to whether a person wants to move or not. That's the main goal. And of course, taxation will play a role, but that's for people to think that down the line. But we are seeing US nationals applying in large numbers to Portugal and to some degree to Greece.
And there are other new countries which are coming up as well. I don't know how popular those are going to be. I've heard about countries beyond the core market, Hungary, and then you have Panama, Moldavia, all these other sort of lesser known countries.
Yes. Well, I mean, Hungary, for some reason, unbeknownst to me, was extremely popular in its old format. Let's call it wasn't a detailed program, but it worked. And the excitement for this program, the guest investor program, is very high. So that's interesting. And we do have, yes, more programs coming up. Nauru was one. Solomon Islands is on path to create a citizenship by investment program. Sierra Leone just announced a residency by investment program. More and more countries are popping up. But I think what we call a core of programs comes down to two things: how well defined the program is, how
Yeah.
easy it is to apply, the regulations and so on. Because North Macedonia, for example, did have, the legislation, but didn't have a program, for example. And that's why it never really took up.
I
But,
never even heard of that.
oh.
Where, North Macedonia?
yeah, 200,000 was citizenship. And the law was amended to include this. But at the end of the day, they didn't process anything. Uzbekistan, Jordan, they have citizenship by investment programs, but nobody talks about them because the program itself isn't well thought out or appealing en masse.
Wasn't the Jordanian program basically aimed at Palestinians?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of theories going around about that. Looking at the program design itself, I would say it was created with foreign nationals who have been residing in Jordan for a long time. Because Jordan, there were a lot of Syrians, Iraqis, Yemenis who had their lives here, had businesses and were very high net worth individuals, but didn't have that status. So maybe the market for the Jordanian CIP was already there. No need to market it, no need to adjust it. Does it work here? That's it. That's all they needed to do. But it never made it into the book as a top program in terms of marketing and promotion.
And you're sitting in Jordan right now.
I am, yeah.
Let me ask you, as we're going to talk about factors and global trends influencing perhaps 2025 migration, do you see the geopolitical tensions, the Middle Eastern wars as being something which is definitely going to affect migration next year?
Well, yes, on two different fronts. One of them is that we've seen this. I've been in this industry for some time. Any major conflict, whatever it is, be it a war or be it economical, has had an impact on investment migration. Inquiries go up. That doesn't always translate to applications go up, but inquiries go up. People are more on edge. They're looking for solutions. On the other side is the MENA market, because the MENA market is a very big one. It's not the biggest, never has been the biggest, but it has been consistent.
Yes, it has. Yeah. The MENA meaning Middle Eastern, North Africa market.
Exactly, yeah.
Yep.
So it has been a consistent market. And I've seen with our clients here in the region, I've seen with the people in the region that there is an unease and they are looking for solutions. It's really difficult to understand. Everybody is looking at it from a macro perspective and a micro perspective. What's going to happen to the region? What's going to happen to me? What can the region do? What can I do? What's going to happen 2 years, 5 years from now? It's a very difficult situation overall. But in terms of investment migration, we've seen this with the Arab Spring. We've seen this with Syria's civil war. It does push applications. It does push inquiries.
Well, if the final result is actually people moving over, then money for those particular countries, then that does make a difference. So yeah, that's one factor I do see as being a catalyst for change next year. But the other factor that I see is possibly problems with popular programs like Portugal, as they have now moved away from real estate and they are more like business entities that we have in the US. There's going to be more regulatory issues, just in the same way that we have in the US. And then again, possibility of businesses collapsing, going down for many reasons, which will bring a problem to the program.
That is interesting. But the truth is, we've seen this a lot. Whatever the investment category or asset is, some bad apples will find a way to abuse it. Be it real estate, be it investment funds, be it businesses. That's always going to happen. We recently published something about Latvia, where a multitude of companies were registered at the same place to get the startup visa. So this happens a lot more. There's always sometimes inflated prices for real estate. In the Caribbean, there's the issue of financing, which is real estate based. So I don't think that the probability for abuse is higher. I think it's there, of course, like any other program. And I think what they've done is make it more appealing to certain markets as well, because the American market is more familiar with funds. It's a liquid asset.
Yeah.
Instead of buying a real estate in a country that you've never been to, and you don't know if you're getting a good deal, a bad deal, what you're going to do with it, how you're going to rent it out.
Yeah.
I think Portugal will be okay in that regard. Yes, and it's not just Portugal. Programs are changing, are evolving, and I think that's the natural progression of it. But they don't want to make it too unappealing. That's where they have to find that balance.
Can I ask you, Emmett, which area do you actually really enjoy writing about?
It differs from time to time. I mostly like writing about governmental policies when they change, because we don't just look at what this means right now. What can it mean for the future? We like to analyze this in terms of how it will affect the program, how it will affect different programs. And that's an interesting part. The Caribbean give us much more to do in that regard, and much more in terms of, well, to put it simply, drama.
Yeah, there's so much happening.
And I think that's a challenge, because we do want to cover the stories that's happening, but at the same time, we don't want to turn into a tabloid.
Yeah, that's right.
And the Caribbean countries make it difficult, I'm going to tell you.
How are some of the changes in international taxation policies and some of the enforcement of these global financial transparency influencing where the individuals are choosing to migrate? I mean, you mentioned the Caribbean and how things are shifting. Are you seeing some of that in play?
Well, we were seeing it more in the UK after they scrapped their non-dom tax regime.
I was just going to mention that. I was going to say that, because...
So it does impact and influence.
Yeah, of course, I'm sure. And what about all those tax benefits in Portugal and Greece? Has that over, or is that still there?
No, in Greece it's still there. In Portugal it's different. So in Portugal, it's the non-habitual residency tax regime is now based on employment, or I think if you're self-employment or direct employment. So it's not applicable to golden visa applicants anymore.
Right.
But in Greece it's still there. But we've seen this shift in the UK now. We've seen it in Portugal. The NHR was a big attraction, let's call it. But these taxation policy updates, Italy responded by doubling its flat tax regime from 100,000 a year to 200,000 a year, which is still reasonable. To answer your question, Mark, these updates, they do have a big effect. I mean, you may be focused more on the headlines in the US after Trump's election, but if you go to the UK, you'll find the same headlines because of the non-dom regime ending. So it's a big deal there. When it comes to the Caribbean, and this is where it gets interesting, the Caribbean are low tax, no tax or low tax jurisdictions, but at the same time, they're not the best jurisdictions to do banking on a global level.
Not a lot of global business hubs there.
You always raises its eyebrow when you say you have a Caribbean bank account or an offshore bank account. The thing about this comes down to the core of why a person would like to get a second citizenship residency. Sadly, most companies in this industry have focused on promoting them on visa-free travel.
Yeah.
And that's just one small part of having a second citizenship.
Yeah, it's certainly not for visa-free travel. Yeah.
No, it's not. I think most people are realizing that they don't want to have one government monopolizing their rights. And that's it. That's why they're getting a second citizenship, a residency in the country that resonates with them on some level. And I think that's what's driving demand in the US, the UK right now. And if India and France do go through with citizenship-based taxation, those will have massive implications in terms of citizenship by investment, because it's a solution.
Right. Tell us a little more about that, Ahmed.
I mean, India have been flirting with the idea for some time. It's very difficult to implement. France have proposed it, and the bill right now is starting its legislative journey, but it's still in early stages. There are some people who think that they will just propose this, then to shift on to exit tax like the Netherlands, Finland, and so on. But citizenship-based taxation, the problem with that is there are only two countries right now that apply citizenship-based taxation: the US and to some degree Ethiopia. And the US is the only one that can back it up with action.
Yeah.
And I think that's the big issue when you come to, let's say France, yes, or India say, yes, we do want to apply this. How are they going to track? Are they going to enforce it?
Yeah.
It's a big issue, which could have implications, but it's not something that I think they can implement anytime soon.
Well, it'll be very interesting, and it's certainly an area, a space to look at. But it just shows, and Mark, you are correct, the taxation issues, it's always money, isn't it? That is a driving factor for sure. It's not the factor. There are other factors, but it is certainly a driving factor for many people.
Sure. Yeah, I mentioned there's like cultural affinity, language barriers, and as we talked about before, access to these global business hubs. But I was wondering, how the international taxation policies and all basically the management of money, how that mixes into things. Everything's a factor. That means there's something out there for somebody, which is good.
Well, the one thing I would ask you, Ahmed, is that do you see this industry ever going away, ever dying?
No. To be honest, I mean, I've been in this industry nearly a decade and I've witnessed 4 RCBI Armageddons.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't think it's going away. I mean, it's been here since the Romans, since the ancient Greeks. Citizenship by investment isn't a new concept. I think it will change, though. It will adapt. Countries are focusing more on what they need, what they want to do, and what the public thinks about it. So, for example, in Portugal and Spain is about to close its golden visa. If you take a look at the number of applicants and the real estate they bought, it doesn't move the needle in terms of total real estate. It's not the main cause of the housing crisis. That's for sure.
Right.
The
I
housing
agree.
crisis, yeah, it's a complex issue, but it's an easy scapegoat for the government. These rich foreigners are coming in and raising rent.
Yes.
So
Yes.
they use it as political leverage, gain votes, and it always pops up before elections.
Well, it's always easy. Blame the immigrant.
Exactly. The rich immigrant. That's 2 in 1 for you. So, yeah.
Yeah. And we're seeing constant sort of battles with the EU. I mean, they may not be happy with the whole CBI programs, but at this point, I don't see the EU as banning them, or I don't think they can.
That's a very interesting subject. You asked me first what I enjoy writing the most. This was actually the story I most enjoyed covering this year because it's a really, really interesting subject. So right now, EU and Malta faced off in court. The Advocate General issued an opinion which says what the EU is proposing isn't applicable, isn't legal, and the court should dismiss the case. Now, the Advocate General, this isn't a ruling. We'll have to wait and see what happens. The judges will make the final ruling, but usually they follow the General's opinion. And if that happens, then the EU has no legal standpoint to close any citizenship by investment program within the Union. But the thing is, they have other ways to pressure member states into not opening or closing theirs.
Yeah.
So it comes down to that. And another layer to this is that the EU has been pressuring the Caribbean for some time. And a lot of people have pointed out that the EU pressuring the Caribbean while Malta and before that Cyprus were active with citizenship by investment programs was a bit hypocritical. Now that they can't close Malta and Cyprus, their attitude may have to shift, at least in terms of the image they're projecting.
Gosh, this is just so interesting, Emmett. We could just keep on talking. There are so many issues and there's so many factors. But here I'm going to ask you, I'm going to give you a magic wand and you can choose or you can wish anything that's going to happen in 2025. What would you wish for?
Okay, that's an interesting question. Well, obviously world peace. But if we're going to focus on RCBI, as a journalist, one of the things that was really interesting to write about this year was the Russian Shared Values Visa.
Oh, that's new.
They opened it to liberal countries, nationals of liberal countries who share traditional Russian values. Now, the visa itself, I wouldn't wave a magic wand to create more visas like this, but as a journalist, it was extremely interesting because if this opens a door to similar visas from different countries, that's a whole new type of immigration channel. You're something that, first of all, is extremely hard to check. How are you going to check values? And something from a purely journalistic point of view is what happens when countries do this to gain voters?
Yes.
What happens when countries do this to create more segregation? What happens when governments use this as a tool? So I think, I wouldn't wish for more of these. I think they're littered with problems. But in terms of something interesting, I would like to see more innovative immigration channels come up. We have citizenship and residency by investment. We have digital nomads, which are relatively new, citizenship by descent, which is gaining traction, and business immigration, which has been there forever, startup visas. But I think right now the focus is on creating something different, something new, and something interesting that really resonates with the person who appreciates personal sovereignty and appreciates governments that appreciate them. This is directly from Robert Kaplan. Sandra Henderson keeps saying, go where you're treated best. And I think RCBI is a tool for people against oppressive governments. That's what we should all hope for.
Well, that's such a profound viewpoint, Ahmed. I'm very impressed and I thank you for it. And hopefully we'll hear more from you next year and see just how much this has actually transpired.
Yes, thank you so much for coming on Global Investment Voice.
And thank you for having me.
Thank you for being with us today on Global Investment Voice. Do you want to get the most out of global migration and citizenship opportunities? Then head on over to our website at globalinvestmentvoice.com. From there, you can easily search and stream from hundreds of podcast episodes, as well as stay current with the latest migration news and investment opportunities by joining our insider newsletter. The topics presented in this podcast are informational in nature only and are not to be taken as specific legal, financial, or investment advice. Mona, Rebecca, and their legal staff can be reached at mshawlaw.com or by calling their New York office at 212-233-7473.